The Missouri Tigers fall in a close one, 34-30 to South Carolina to fall to 7-3 on the season. Their third SEC loss of the year, their third loss on the road in a game where in the first half they looked kind of similar to what they did in the first half against Texas A&M and Alabama on the road, unprepared, couldn't get anything going offensively. The South Carolina defensive front, which was built up a lot going into this game, honestly on the edges wasn't putting too much pressure on the quarterback, but definitely influencing the run game. Compare that to the second half where Mizzou offense really able to get things going. The defense, kind of a shaky game all four quarters, not really able to contain the explosive play, which has been a problem for them all season. But they got some great stops. They got an interception early on in the game, but unable to close it out. Four lead changes in the final 10 minutes of this one. So it's been the story for Mizzou all season, a chaotic game that comes down to the wire. And this one, they couldn't come out on top. You're with Missouri on SI. I'm Joey Van Zummeren, joined by Michael Stamps back in Columbia, Missouri. For our instant reaction from this one, just Michael, your immediate thoughts from this one.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of a flipped script, I guess. We've seen so many of these games where the offense just cannot create any explosive plays and the defense is locking things down. And some of the deep ball passes to, there was the one to Nick Harbor, obviously the one to Dalvin Campbell, I believe is his name. Um, kind of just like surprising. And in a general sense, we've seen so many of these close games this season where somehow, one way or another, Missouri's come out on top. So I'm honestly still a bit surprised, if,
Yeah.
if we're being completely honest. It's this, I feel like, you know, media and maybe the reporter or, and the fan base, excuse me, are now accustomed to this team coming out on top with these clutch victories. And wasn't the case tonight. Um, Obviously there's a lot that needs to be addressed, but it was a well played football game. I mean, that second half was, I feel like we say this frequently in these post game shows, but maybe some of the best, strung together offensive drives we've seen all season. Brady Cook, don't really know how healthy he is or isn't, but he made some pretty darn good throws, whether it was like intermediate, middle of the field, or down the field. That touchdown pass to Luther Burden. I mean, that's you know you're not going to get much better than that. It's a pretty darn good throw, and we finally saw that deep ball connection to Marquise Johnson. So it's I think it's a little surprising to see him not come out on top with this one. Defensively, when South Carolina was trying to enforce the run and get down in the trenches with Rocket Sanders, it seemed like Missouri did an excellent job of containing that. And as soon as for the most part, the North Stars would drop back, to throw, there were so many big plays, and I think you can probably go back and pinpoint a few that are gonna end up being difference makers. I don't remember the down, but there's one, and it might have been third down. Lenore Sellers rolls out. Johnny Walker has a wide open shot at him, and I'm, not gonna pretend like I could tackle Lenore Sellers, but Johnny Walker misses that sack for a first down conversion. Rest is history. So you can go back and look at a couple plays probably that changed the tone of this game. But uh, it was well played. I mean, uh, it's not surprising to see that this specific Missouri team, came back and made it a close game. So it was chaotic and crazy and weird, like every one of these tight battles has been so far, which was not a surprise. But I mean, there's going to be room, obviously reason to be disappointed, but uh, definitely a well played, for the most part, certain areas, well played game.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at that second half, I was thinking in that one, like, man, with the way Mizzou is handling this one, this could really be the resume boosting win they were looking for with how both sides of the ball were playing. And then obviously just ultimately the problems for the defense that had been for them all game had just come up, reared its ugly head in the last few minutes there. I thought the offense, obviously those first two or the first two quarters pretty ugly. Their last four drives of the first half, they averaged 4.75 plays, 6 yards. Just pitiful, especially for the opportunities the defense was creating for them. And then in the second half, though, really able to get into the most true form of what they can be, what this team can be. And obviously now it's week 12 and it's too late. They're not going to make the playoffs. Um, Too late for them to be reaching that. Injuries have played a big factor in that. But again, I guess kind of vindicating for anybody who has believed in this Missouri offense. that has believed that what they put on tape so far has not been true to their identity, to their potential. You have Nate Noel rushing for over 150 yards. He was averaging something like 6.5 yards per game at one point in the game. Really using him to be able to set up that pass game. And then not only does it do that, but then also the pass game actually creates explosives. That you have the 42-yard catch by Marquise Johnson, just a great throw and catch there. And then the 4th and 6 catch by Luther Burden, game on the line. There's been so many times for as much as Luther Burden hasn't been the big, 2,000 yard, 15 touchdown um, draft prospect guy. He continues to show up in massive moments. He hasn't had a 4th and 17 moment this year, but that's about as close as you can get to it. And this one game on the line just makes an incredible catch. Something, I mean, he really isn't, that's not his strong suit to make those. It wasn't necessarily 50-50, but possession catches. He makes a play on that one and then brings it in for a touchdown there. And again, just for this offense to have this performance feels very vindicating. Brady Cook returning from injury. And this one, you could definitely feel at the start. It felt like the injury was affecting him, especially like a lot of people that were there watching pregame warmups pointed out just his throwing motion, how that was being affected. It turns out it's a wrist injury for Brady. Brady, kind of some mystery on that in the Alabama game on what exactly it was that he suffered because he hit his hand on the helmet of a rushing defender, but then he also rolls up on his wrist on the broadcast. So it seems like it was the wrist that was bothering him more than anything, his throwing wrist. And so early on in the game, you could see, especially on that first drive, some passes that were low, and then he adjusted to that. He was still able to zip it just fine. So I thought overall Brady had a pretty solid day. Could have put some more points on the board in the first quarter. They really struggled with third downs offensively. They started off the game 0 for 6 on third downs in the first half, and that obviously hurt them, left some points on the board. Blake Craig that misses that field goal early on, and again, in games like these, points like that are hard to come by. Every single one matters, and so a missed field goal and failed offensive drives like that aren't going to help you. Michael, any thoughts on this game moving forward?
I mean, obviously, I don't know if, I don't know. I would imagine the tone of practices and things like that doesn't change now. Um, but the college football playoff hope is completely erased. Not that there was a huge chance that it would still, still happen with a win. I think a couple teams helped out by losing earlier today. But I don't know if it would have been enough to, really catapult them into a realistic possibility where you go beat, blow out Mississippi State, blow out Arkansas, and you're a 10-2 SEC team. But uh, so I feel like we have to, maybe dash those hopes now. Not that, that was going to happen, regardless. But yeah, I mean, I think, you talked about missed field goals and you look back at, what I think, did Craig miss 2 field goals today?
I
One or
know it's
two?
just a
It
wonderful.
was one. Okay, he misses one there. You have a missed 2-point conversion from Brady Cook. Uh, that's a couple plays like that early where I mean, it's all hypothetical in a perfect world. If you hit on those, then you win the football game. So, I think there's going to be some stuff where they shot themselves in the foot a little bit. Defensively, it was interesting to see the missed tackle issue. There was a lot of those in the whole game really, but they stand out. Obviously, Lenore Sellers is a hard guy to bring down. Um, the Rocket Sanders final touchdown was just bad. I don't know how many people missed him, and again, hard guy to bring down especially when he's downhill like that. That's where he, thrives the most. But you still have to do that in the clutch moments of the game. So stuff there. One of the longer completions, it might have been to Campbell in that fourth quarter. Couple missed tackles there, and then they're sprinkled all throughout the tape. I want to say one of the first or second touchdown might have been the Jared Smith, I believe his name is Jared Brown. That 38-yard screen touchdown. It was put him up 14-6 in the first half. He got missed by 2 guys. I know Nick DeLoach missed a guy in the second half. So the list goes on, and I'm definitely missing some. So that's a fascinating issue, and we really haven't seen the blown coverage deep ball issue. Um, Goodness, since I don't know, it's been a long time. Maybe you point to A&M or Alabama, but not a ton of those there. You remember him look back at Boston College or his one against Vanderbilt. So we're looking to the beginning part of the season. But for the most part, has not been an issue at all. This is probably one of the best quarterback performances that's been put up against this Missouri defense on the ground and in the air. So um, defensively, disappointing. For the most part, like I said, I don't know what Rocket Sanders' final stat line was. Obviously, he has that clutch touchdown, so maybe the stats don't matter. But for the most part, he was basically locked up, and they do a lot of stuff up the middle for him, and it was just not there. Chris McClellan and Christian Williams all had incredible games. Johnny Walker had himself a pretty nice game too, even though he did miss that sack. And it's all hypothetical, like I said, and not everything goes your way every single game, but you get that sack. Um, different scenario. So, uh, positives and negatives on the defensive side of the ball. Missed tackles are going to be a commonly talked about point, I'd like to imagine, and some of those coverages as well. I mean, you got a guy like Nick Harbor, that first touchdown of the game. Uh, Even though he's massive, he has, you know, unique elite speed. You have to adjust for that and prepare for that because he's a guy that they're going to try to go over the top, and they did exactly that. So just gotta, maybe it's a game planning thing. One thing I will mention is, and you kind of mentioned it as well, Joey, that the first half of this game looked like Alabama. It looked like A&M. It looked like the game was done. There was not a lot of hope. And Eli Drinkwitz at halftime on the broadcast said that the first defensive drive of the second half is going to be the most important one of the game, and they get a stop there, which was pretty uncommon in the first half. And then, obviously they don't win, but puts them back in the game. For this team to adjust at halftime and, adjust offensively, adjust defensively, and have an answer to South Carolina and give themselves a chance to win is a very impressive. It's an impressive feat. I think as well that should probably be addressed because clearly in the other two road games where they lost by a million points, that didn't happen. So,
Right. I think ironically, this game is probably Missouri's third or fourth best performance on the
yeah,
season,
yeah.
and they just don't end up winning it. And what you said about adjusting at halftime is such a key point. I mean, I talked about just the difference in offensively, especially. And so, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a disappointing for this one, but ultimately, I think they're going to drop down in the rankings just because that's how rankings work. But at least for me, and I think probably a lot of other fans too, I think higher of this Missouri team after today. So moving forward, you got two games on the rest of the schedule, and we'll see what they take from this. And obviously now without the playoffs in mind, kind of hard to tell what bowl hopes look like. But again, all you can do is win these last two games. So you got a Arkansas team that played Texas really well today, coming to town to round out the regular season here in 2 weeks. So that's all we have for you today on our instant reactions for Missouri on SI. We appreciate you tuning in. We hope you take a look at the rest of our coverage.